We will get underway the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, August the 9th, 2018. Calling this meeting to order, and if we could have the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Carol Wingate, if you'll do the honor.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. And if we could have roll call, please.
Vice Chair Newman.
Present.
Commissioner Heschler.
Here.
Commissioner Wingate.
Here.
And Commissioner Keldorf.
Here.
Thank you, Brenna. If there are public communications, this would be the time to do that. And I don't see anybody in the audience for that. Nothing from the consent calendar. We'll just move right on into written communications other than what is in our packet. Mr. McLean?
No written communications.
Then moving on to item H, new business, a public hearing. This will be a variance to allow a reduction from 25 feet to 5 feet for a deck and parking, an elimination of the side property setback from 15 feet to 0 feet, a 10% reduction in the required landscaping within the setbacks to accommodate additional parking spaces, and the elimination of the required on-site loading space in order to provide more parking at 507 South Douglas Street. And if we could have a staff report.
Thank you. 507 South Douglas Street is an odd property. It looks like a remnant. It's impacted by the railroads. So this is the property up on the screen. This faint blue line is the property line. So you can see that this is like a triangle with one corner truncated. And it's on the bottom is Douglas Street. So north is to the right in this diagram. It's a very difficult property to work with. The existing building is here. It was built at a 45-degree angle to the street, which makes it a little awkward. And you'll notice that it is right on the property line on the northwest side. That's the existing situation. Also, in this very faint yellow, is an easement. It's a 25-foot wide easement in the railroad right-of-way that is in the favor of the property owner. Okay, so that effectively serves as a setback on that side. So this is the property in aerial. You can see there's an existing building, an industrial building, not very interesting building. You can also see the easement there. There's a camper trailer on the easement. And here's the building as it looks, at least when this picture was taken. Not a very exciting building. This is what the applicant hopes to do with it, though. Turn it into something very unique and different in that area. Colorful, vibrant, lots of articulated surfaces and so forth, lots of colors. We like this idea. There's a lot of great ideas that the property owner has in mind for the uses in here. Not all of them will work right now, but over time, as he finds ways to solve problems related to parking, incrementally this can become a very, very interesting project. And I will not do it justice, so the applicant is here, and later on he can explain what his vision is for this property. But in the meanwhile, the building is in for plan check. The building can be built with a few problems that need to be solved with this variance. And the building may function, you know, as primarily a warehouse on the ground floor and things like that for a while until these other solutions come in, and that's okay. Because the variance is not about the use, the variance is about the building, okay? So I want to point out this part here. It's hard to see in this diagram, but you'll see clearly what it is later. This is a big balcony on the second floor. This serves also as a roof for the drive-in drop-off pickup area. And also this area over here, this is one example of additional height that's being built within the setback area. There's another one that would be behind the blue part of the building, which you can't see, so I didn't circle it. So back to this. Let me show you what's going on. This is the front setback area, and these are the side setback areas. I apologize because the projector wasn't on. I didn't get to test the colors, so it's not as clear as it could be. But you can see that this is all that's left to build in. Okay, and luckily the building is already outside of that boundary. But any new additions have to follow the current code. So second story addition would have to be moved in 15 feet on the northwest side in order to build up. So this is a unique shape. It's not that large, and it's made smaller and even more confining by applying the setbacks. This is a good candidate for a variance. I'll explain why in a bit. But I want to show, this is the building. You can see how it already extends into the setback. This darker area represents the second floor plan roughly. So there's two parts. That part in the far right is the yellow tower that I circled, and the other part a little bit up and left would also be encroaching. This would not be permitted without a variance. Okay. Lastly, this is the second story balcony. It makes a little bit of an encroachment, a little triangle down there. This is the balcony as the applicant envisions it. This is a little bit of an odd view. You'd have to be floating over the driveway pickup area to see it from this angle, but the idea is you can see the blue part of the building, which we saw before on the right there. And this is a nice outdoor amenity for the various uses that will occur on the second and third floor. But also, when you hear about the first floor, you can imagine people coming up to enjoy lunch up here, for example. And this is over the pickup and drop-off area. So again, back to this. Let me show you what the variance is about. There's three parts to this request. Part one is the setbacks. These are the encroachments. The one in the upper part is already encroached on the first floor, so the applicant wants to continue that same encroachment on the second and third floor. The lower part would be a new encroachment. The loading space. The code requires a loading space on the property, but we have this 25-foot easement on the side, which is completely accessible to the property. It just doesn't make sense to require a loading space on the property when you can put the loading space in the easement. So we're going to recommend the variance for that as well. In both of these cases, there is obviously land to build, for example, and there is obviously land to put a loading space. You could do it, but at what cost? It would come at the expense of parking, which is already going to be at a super premium on this property. It would come at the expense of other amenities that we find to be much more valuable than, you know, a loading space that could be easily accommodated in the adjacent easement, such as bicycle docking stations when we have eventually docked bicycles in the area, bike racks as well. Just to remind everybody, this is only a half a block away from the property that we looked at last meeting, I think it was, or two meetings ago. Yeah, that was on Utah. This is at the end of Utah. And the same logic applies here. There's a lot of people that need to eat lunch that are within easy walking distance, comfortable walking distance. This is also less than a quarter of a mile from the Douglas Street station of the Green Line. There's a lot of potential here for people to walk. There's a lot of potential for people to bike. And there's probably a good reason to discourage a lot of driving to this location. So we're okay with recommending to the commission more bike racks, more parking where we can get it. This is not the final configuration. This is actually a scaled back version. There may be even one or two additional parking spaces that we could negotiate into this space. But we don't want to overburden this project with a lot of parking because it just sends the wrong message. What we want is people to come here by other means. And honestly, if you do drive there and you can't find parking, you're going to either move on or just try again another day without driving. That's okay. The last bit is landscaping. And that goes to what I was talking about before. We are asking for a reduction, an unspecified reduction, I think, or maybe it was 10% of the landscaping, but not specified where that would be. And that is to accommodate bike racks. That is to accommodate more bike racks. And that is to accommodate maybe the corner of a piece of a parking space that we want to squeeze in that otherwise wouldn't fit. And that is also to accommodate two driveways, as well as access from the easement for some of the parking spaces. So rather than confine ourselves to go strictly by the code on the issue of landscaping, we want to have the flexibility to move it around a little bit and reduce it a little bit in exchange for these other more desirable features of the property. So for a variance, There are 4 findings that the code requires the Planning Commission to make. If you can find these findings, then we would recommend that you approve this application. The first is that there are exceptional or ordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property. This says, or the intended use, but I don't think that's applicable anymore. I think that's old language, but it's in there, and you can do that too. So there's unique circumstances of the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the area, and the same as the vicinity in the zone. I think that's a very easy finding to make, given the shape and the size of this property. The variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right possessed by other property in the same vicinity. Again, the shape makes it difficult to build up to achieve anything close to the FAR that everybody else could do fairly easily on a rectangle. Granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such vicinity. I think that the only case where that may be an issue would be where you build right on a property line, like on the northwest side of the property. However, we've got a 25-foot easement which serves for all practical purposes as a setback. So I think that it would be easy to make this finding as well. And then granting of the variance will not adversely affect the general plan. It is our belief that the general plan supports this sort of thing through a variance. There's no reason, there's no extraordinary leap of faith or anything that would be required to not be able to make this finding. It is consistent with the general plan. It may not be consistent with all of the zoning parameters, but that's what a variance is for. Okay, so that concludes the basics of the presentation. The applicant is here. I think that it would be good if he explained what his vision for the property is, but I want you to understand, as I've said before, that you're approving the variance to allow the building to be built, and we're not addressing the uses of the building at this time. We will work with the applicant, and the applicant will do some things on his own, and we will be before the Planning Commission and eventually the City Council with new solutions in the future that will be applicable to this property as well as many others that will help in a situation like this. And they're not guaranteed, and the applicant knows that. So if everything doesn't work out, he's going to have the most beautiful warehouse in El Segundo. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Do we have any questions for staff at this time?
Joe?
Who owns the easement? The railroad?
Same thing.
Okay.
I'll let the applicant address that.
Just for information, I did drive the property and went on the property the other day. It's a really shallow lot.
And with that easement there, Greg, that 25-foot easement, would then the planning department recommend that he develop it for a loading zone or access? Would it be developed, or would it just be there, remain as it is?
It would need to be paved, but he's going to have to do that to some extent anyway, just to get the access to the parking spaces. So a little bit further would be enough to qualify as a loading zone. But otherwise, it meets the dimensions already. There's no obstructions above. It's more than adequately wide and definitely long enough. So
How wide is the easement? I'm sorry.
25 feet.
Okay.
And you use the term, we'll get to the applicant in a minute, but use the term drop off and pickup, which is under,
Yeah.
I mean, what is?
Well, the area in the front, there's a driveway on each side of the projection of the proposed balcony. And the driveway goes under that balcony,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right at the front door of the building, and it's quite long, and it's wide enough for 2 cars in a one-way direction, one lane to pull over, kind of like at the airport, pull over, let people out or pick people up, and other people can go out or, past that car and still do the same thing. So in a situation like this, we see that as probably an easy trade-off for additional on-site parking, because you can probably get about 4 cars in that space, but if you really did them to the dimensions of a parallel parking space, we're talking 3 cars. We could unload and load probably, I don't know, dozens and dozens of people in an hour of lunchtime, that could take an Uber or a Lyft over there, and that car moves on. There's no need to park it. So this is one of the examples of where we've encouraged a little bit of a a little bit of forward thinking. Given the circumstances of this particular property and the uses that are available to it, we think this is a good thing to do. And you know, the alternative is they could put maybe 3 more parallel parking spaces there.
Any more questions? All right. At this time, we'd like to hear from the applicant.
How are you?
Wonderful. If you'll just state your name.
I'll drop this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I thank you guys for letting me come down and speak tonight. My name is Brett Drogmond. I have been developing in El Segundo for the last 10 years. It's a passion of mine. My background is actually storytelling. I worked for Walt Disney Feature Animation for 10 years in their story department, and now I've chosen El Segundo as the location for my last 4 stories. And this is my newest one. It's called Market Station. And the idea was when it came about a few years back when I was dating my girlfriend and went down to Grand Central Market in downtown Los Angeles, and I'd walked through Grand Central Market for the first time and just fell in love with the concept of people from all over the world coming to one destination and sharing a small table and having a taco and a piece of pizza and talking about the food and having this just beautiful culinary experience where you walk through and just all walks of life. You see the passion of food and the passion of chefs and people there just living their, you know, what they want to do. And I set out on a mission to look in all of the South Bay to find a place for a food hall, for a culinary experience, and was lucky enough to meet the Bundys, who owned this building and built it back in the mid-50s, and was able to talk to them, make a connection with them, make a promise to them that whatever I develop there will always have their name attached to the building in some capacity. And so the idea of Market Station was born. It's currently an 8,500 square foot building on, like Greg said, a really unique lot. If you look down, it looks like a B-2 bomber. And if you look at that area, it almost looks like, you know, they chopped these giant, you know, parcels of land up, and there was this tiny little triangle, and they said, oh, let's just put something on it. So we're the smallest little tiny drop in a huge ocean of big, you know, big buildings and big developers. We're swamped by, you know, $100 million and billion-dollar developers all around, and I'm just an independent guy. This was my own dream. I've put my house down as collateral on the building. That's how much I believe in the area. And so it's called Market Station. Market Station is a tribute to the history of El Segundo. My great-great-grandfather started at Standard Oil when it first opened, and my dad used to take me down and said, well, this is where your grandfather used to live. And this is the story of my life. And many of the El Segundo community's life will be put into this building. That's my passion for this. So, you know, we lucked out in that we're right next to the railroad station, which we absolutely love. So we're taking that into account. The Chevron train goes by at lunchtime and blows this amazingly loud horn at 12:05, and we love that. We're building that into our marketing plan. And the big idea is basically the whole downstairs is basically a food hall with about 8 to 10 different food eateries from around the world. The concept is eat your way around the world. We're luckily enough, we are within an 8-minute walk, there's 8,000 people that work within an 8-minute walk, and there is currently 0 food offerings, 0 retail, 0 alcohol, nothing. So this is literally my first concept was going to be called The Hub, because if you look at it, we're literally in the middle of the spoke of all of these people, but it didn't have the story that I wanted that Market Station will tell. So downstairs, that whole white building is the existing building. That front area will be open sort of seating, and as Greg's alluded to, we have this giant deck off the space. It's 1,000 square feet. Well, you'll be able to come in and drop off an Uber. It's tall enough to get a shuttle bus under there, so I'm built for, dropping people off safely under the rain. You're covered. As you walk into the downtown area, like I said, you eat your way around the world with 8 to 10 different hot food vendors and a small stage in the middle that have a DJ or a Christmas tree or carolers. Like I said, after Disney, my next job was I worked in minor league baseball, so I planned events. Actually, that was before Disney. I was right out of college, so I planned events. So I'm a big event guy, so I love bringing in all different cultures and, you know, a calendar of things to do. The second floor is that entire back space behind our shipping containers. Basically, it's a travel shipping container theme. They're not actual shipping containers. They're fabricated to look like it. But our biggest budget is actually, high-end metal, that it's all different textures, it's all different colors. The top right is actually an homage to the Frank Gehry building. So Frank Gehry built his famous binoculars in Venice or Santa Monica in the 70s. This is a modern homage back to Frank Gehry. So this building looks right onto the Frank Gehry building, and we call those the binoculars that look back onto him. So the concept of the second floor on the left, that large gray pod, will basically be a professional cooking kitchen. You'll be able to go in and do cooking demonstrations, film cooking shows. One of my businesses is a production company, and we film some cooking shows currently. So my hope is that El Segundo comes alive as this culinary destination, to be able to say, oh, have you seen the Market Station shoot? So there'll be a live audience. You can watch cooking shows, pop-up chefs. It's an event space. On the right, I'd love to have a brewery on the second floor. So a brewery that's open with a 1,000-square-foot area out front, and then behind the brewery is a 1,000-square-foot play space for kids. So my son, his favorite place to go in the world is Rock and Brew, simply because they have the size of Brenna's desk, that tiny little climby place. Well, I want to create a safe place to bring my family on a weekend, so I can have a beer, I can watch a game, and my son can play on the grass. We'll have movie nights out there, just a really safe place to be. And then as we go up, the binoculars are actually, my hope is to have a barbershop in the binoculars. So you'd go up, grab your beer, get your shave, get your hair cut, salon on the other side. And then the left front top is really reserved for, I'm calling it a sticky tenant. So I want to either have a museum, a rotating art exhibit, something that, it's not created for office space. There's so much office space around me, I don't need that. It's sort of a cruise ship mentality. When you go on a cruise ship, what amenities do you need for the week? I want to pack that building with anything you may need. Laundry, a FedEx drop-off, a little mini convenient grab-and-go store. I'm a technology guy, all created with an app. So you can go and pre-order your food. You can go and, go pick up your dry cleaning. Anything that 8,000 people in that 8-minute walk may need is here. And that is Market Station. Greg and the Planning Commission, we've worked on this for a year to come up with, we were trying to build a present building sort of with a future mindset. So we've got 40 bike stalls out in front. We're talking to some bike share companies now. There'll be Uber drop-off. We'll be, we're right by like he said, we're less than a quarter mile from the actual, the metro. Then the bus actually is two blocks away as well. That's the hope.
Incredibly exciting. My God, you're a busy guy.
I am, yeah. And I'm a single dad, so my son is helping me design it. We actually built it out of Legos first.
Hence your inspiration.
Yes,
right.
Just to make sure it was structurally sound. So
wow. That's cute.
Yeah.
That is cute. So we have some questions for this gentleman. Anybody have some?
I think it's a great location because, as you say, there's no place to eat or drink or anything. It's a walk to Trader Joe's in that area on Rosecrans. It looks like a great idea. And I can see where it would take advantage of public transportation, and it's easily walkable for lots and lots of folks. Haven't been able to see life-size plans. I'm sure you've got elevators in there, so it's ADA and...
I mean, we have 3 sets of stairs and a 3-floor elevator. So my plan is to include everybody and not, discourage. So.
Yeah, you said that the play area is going to be on the grass, but it's on the second floor.
So if you haven't been all of my buildings I've built in your city have grass decks. So they're basically fake grass, but it's the trend. So my last building, the Idea Factory on Lomita, I don't know if you guys have a chance to see, we have a 1,200 square foot. It's called Sky Park, and it's a floating deck on the second floor where all of the companies go out and have their lunch every day. So that's already what we've done. This will even have a larger Sky Park kind of setup with a miniature golf course built into the grass so the kids can play, have screenings at night, and there'll be yoga out there as well. I mean, everything is multifunctional. Whatever the people need, we'll make it so.
I remember they did a survey in the downtown area, and one of the topics and subjects that came up that was missing was cooking. And that could be incredibly valuable for, this would be for downtown, but clearly because of your location, you're very resourceful in thinking of outside the box out there, because you can do a lot with that. People cooking schools, cooking programs, and obviously you must be aligned with some good chefs that would like to be creative in that area, because that will certainly be a draw. It will be a very successful draw, I would say.
Yeah, we've got a great level of interest from chefs all over the place that want. I mean, part of me, I love being, helping people, get their careers up. I'd love to find some startup chefs that haven't had the capacity to start up their own restaurant, but they are a stay-at-home mom that has a whole, giant basket of recipes that no one has given her the chance. So our plan is really to have one sort of rotating stall. We're calling them counters downstairs that will be seasonal, and it'll be young. It'll be giving young people the opportunity to showcase their talents. But I think that we'll have, I'm not putting McDonald's, I'm not putting any chains in. These will be, craft food, farm to table, exactly what people want. You're healthy. I mean, just down the street, we're across from people that are trying to cure cancer. So if I can help keep them healthy and keep them, working harder and more focused, then that's what we want to do. So,
in a perfect world, should everything go your way, what's your time frame? What are your thoughts of time frame?
We want to break ground in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That depends on, our variance tonight. There's a few corrections that we're finishing, but, this is my 4th project, so we try to knock 99.9 of the things out of the water before we even got submitted to you guys. We spent a lot of time working with the planning department, and so far, Brent has been fantastic. The number of corrections are very, very minimal. So like we said, I think collectively we've come up with a good strategy. The building is in essence, parked, and we're building this structure 100% as is.
Right.
This building will look exactly like this, per your variance approval. We just won't have the allowed parking, and that's something.
When you purchased this property, did you foresee that you needed to have a variance in order to fulfill your dream? Or did you sort of get into the program?
I was not aware of the back setback,
okay,
to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, when we bought the property, I knew that we had the 25-foot setback.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of thought that we could go vertically up and not build out. Does that make sense? So I'm not building out past on the back side. I'm not building further. I'm just going vertically
You're
up.
mimicking the existing
Mimicking
footprint.
the exact
Yes.
footprint. The only thing that's not is just that the deck off the front.
Right.
And we've looked at it. We've looked at how can we move it back 5 feet.
Right.
And you can't drive cars underneath it. I mean, I want people to line up, Uber, and in Uber, there's 50,000 drop-offs an hour in Los Angeles with Uber. So I foresee cars lined up and just dropping off. It's a lot quicker than having people park. So the parking is something that over the next year we'll solve, collectively. And we've got a lot of people interested in helping out in the area. So, sorry, to answer your question, did I foresee the easement? No,
Yeah.
I mean, we worked with the planning department, and this is sort of where, we had a lot of things we wanted to do variances for, and we said, let's just do these, and then everything else will continue. So,
Okay.
So I know we're not talking about use, but yet that is the whole, that's what's so exciting about this. Food brings people together. I'm a huge fan. I think your direction is right on that, even though we're not talking about use.
Right.
Parking will be the big issue if this idea is where you head. And I'm with Greg that I'd like to see us as a city get away from very stringent parking restrictions because we are evolving. We rely on cars way too much. The yellow Lego, is that a stairwell? Is that what that is?
Correct. The left side is it's actually the 3-story stairwell and elevator together.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see the light go up and down. I'm all about lighting, so this building will look just as spectacular at night as it will during the day.
Yeah,
so it'll look like an amusement park ride.
It's beautiful, and the homage to Geary is very smart.
Thank
so,
you.
Nice work. The easement. So the railroad owns that?
That's LA Metro, and the Bundys had it for 50 years, and they basically just signed the lease over. So they don't use that portion. In fact, it's completely sort of gated off behind us.
So if that does need to be paved and Metro says, no, you can't pave it, what do you do?
I believe they've already said yes.
Oh.
Yeah, you can top it. You just can't dig into the dirt. So, and if I remember correctly, I think it is paved behind the building, not just where the parking is. So I don't think that's an issue. I can double check with that, but
Okay.
So you will have parking.
we will.
You will have parking.
Yeah, I mean, we'll end up having about 15 to 17 spots on site,
And how big is your building when it's all said and done?
15,000.
Okay.
You know, and just a little foreshadowing. I mean, we've got our neighbors.
So
are-
you're creating an environment so that people don't rely on having to have to park.
correct.
We want them to walk, Uber, Lyft, Bird, Lime, all
Like,
of that stuff.
Again, there are 8,000 people in an 8-minute walk. So why would we ever say, please get in your car and drive? Just walk on over.
Yeah.
And our neighbors are excited. I've already got 2 or 3 people that said, have my parking lot on the weekends. Have it at night, no problem.
Great.
When we do come back to you, I think it'll be like, you know, we've got tons of parking at night.
So you are visualizing that you're going to have an evening crowd that will be residential and people that are
Absolutely.
interested, and then you'll have the daytime crowd for the people that work and are employed.
I think it'll be completely different crowds. I mean,
Okay.
I'm going to have a breakfast, lunch. Bring your office
Weekend.
over and sit on the 1,000-square-foot deck and have your meeting. I mean, a lot of this building will be open space for the people to walk over. We'll have nighttime crowd and we'll have weekend crowd. I mean, the fact that we're that close to the metro, I want this to be an arts district style destination. I want people to come in on the weekends. Show me your metro ticket and I'll get you free French fries, whatever it is. I want to put El Segundo on the map as a culinary destination. And this is how it starts.
Mm-hmm.
So my pitch back to the city will be, you know, what I want to do is make, you know, this place a superstar. I'm going to need your assistance and your guidance Monday through Friday, you know, 8 to 5. What can we do to limit that parking restriction? On the weekends, I'll get tons of parking. On the nights, tons and tons of parking. So it's this little window, you know, that we say, how can we creatively look at this? I mean, we could have loaded it with 6 or 8 more parking spots, but Greg and Brennan, we kind of sat together and said, let's put 40 bike stalls in front. You know,
Are you
Oh.
using the easement for parking as well?
the easement is actually flow through to parking, so we aren't actually parking on the easement. You drive in the easement and park that way. That
I'm
makes
talking
sense.
about behind the building.
We're not. That'll actually be shipping containers.
Okay.
That where all the food vendors will use for their hot and cold storage. So that space is used. So all of these counters will be 15 by 15, but they've got these great shipping containers in the back that'll have all the storage. So it's just all in your face food.
And you've thought about deliveries and how there's-
100%.
and
So we'll offer deliveries through your app, through the whole.
no, I
all
mean,
of,
your delivery when people need to come, the trucks to deliver to you.
correct. So they'll deliver they'll deliver in the easement before 7 a.m.
Okay,
So,
it all happens before
100%,
7.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you do end up having a brewery, I just assume there not be parking there.
100%. Yeah, I mean, we took a field trip down to Anaheim Packing House. I don't know if you guys have been there. I mean, it's absolutely spectacular. It's an old sun-kissed orange building that's maybe, 50,000 square feet, and they have 0 parking. So they make you park kind of at a civic center and walk over. And their mandate was why, because a large part of it is a brewery. Why would we want people driving to a brewery? That doesn't make sense. So I love beer. Part of this will be, 2,500 square feet down on the ground floor, or one of the large containers, I'm hoping, is a brewery, tap house. Not that we're not making beer on site, but we're calling it the best of the South Bay. I want to be able to go in, someone from the Arts District come in, try El Segundo Brewery and say, wow, this needs to be, not just in El Segundo. So I've met with a lot of local restaurateurs and beer people and wine people, and people are excited. So
I love it.
Mhm.
Any questions there?
Question maybe for staff or for Greg. What is the walkability of this area? And I should familiarize myself a little more, but if somebody's walking from work, and how are the sidewalks and the crosswalks?
Some parts are good and some parts are really bad. Right now, we need improvements getting to the station and back. But that's not expected to be the initial walking target, but we definitely need to do work there. And we're considering that in the in some of the solutions that we're coming up with. But I'll get into that a little bit later. But the walkability from, say, Utah Street is a lot better. Those are fine. And so we think a lot of the customers will be coming from that direction. It's from Coral Circle at the north is fine. I mean, it's not, it's not shady and it's not, you know, it's not pleasant, but it's a short walk.
Right.
So-
Safety, mostly.
Safety is not going to be much of a problem, provided we can get a good crosswalk here. That's going to be key.
And is that something that we talk more about when we talk about use?
Yeah, let me diverge on that just a little bit. We're not going to be proposing straight giveaways. You know, just because you're close to a station, you know, we'll get you something maybe, but we're looking for ways to improve the experience. So for pedestrians, if you're close, for bicyclists, if you're a little further out. So obviously, if you have no direct route from the station to the place, you can't really qualify for a pedestrian reduction in parking, right? So we don't know the mechanism yet. We don't know what we're going to try to do, but there has to be a little bit of common sense to this. So we're not proposing a giveaway, and I also want to say that we're not proposing to solve Mr. Drogman's issues with future work that we're going to do. He has to solve some on his own. He's already indicated that he's lined up parking for the evenings and for the weekends, and that's when it's going to be needed. So that sort of thing, all we need is a covenant that we would see. He gets it recorded or something, some sort of a contract, and then we're good. So in combination, what he can do and what we can do and what he can do to qualify for what we can do, and this applies to other property owners as well, should all work together to make this happen. But failing that, there's going to be limitations on what he can do with this property.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, there's 2 schools within a pretty close area. Vista Mar School.
Yeah.
You know, that's right kind of across the street. I could imagine that being your place being a magnet for kids after school.
We're right between the 2 schools, and they're building that indoor volleyball. You know, they'll have huge weekend tournaments where the
Right.
kids can just walk 2 blocks.
Right.
And
So going back to Michelle's point about safety and access, that pedestrian access is going to be huge. So I realize that's a city issue.
If I may, a lot of times the improvements for pedestrians and so forth will have to follow, you know, once the destination is there, because it doesn't always make sense to beef up the sidewalks and make everything really nice if there's no destination, right? But once the destination's there, then it becomes a little bit urgent.
Yep.
And again, Greg, we've been asked to allow a variance, which is an unusual scenario, as you explained to us, for the building, not for the use or its purpose. So it's just for the building.
Yeah.
And that would then allow, should tomorrow he decide that he needed to sell it and his dream would be, that variance would then stay with the property or stay with the building?
It stays with the property, yeah.
Stays with the property, okay.
Yeah.
So
I
would it
do-
also allow future use for if it's not going to happen? He's
Yeah,
very,
well-
very dedicated to this vision.
He's already in plan check with the building.
Yeah.
So once the building's built, there wouldn't be much concern about the variance anymore, because it would have allowed the building to be built.
Yeah,
And then, but
yeah,
it's still there if
That's
anyone wants
right.
to do another addition or something.
okay.
So with the Utah project a couple weeks ago and this one, you know, we're sort of trending that way with some of these variances.
Yeah.
No, well, that wasn't a variance. That was a code amendment.
It could-
That's
and
right.
and we
That's right.
didn't choose
well,
to
the
do it-
relaxation of parking, I
Yeah.
think, had a lot to do with that.
I didn't want to direct a code amendment in this case for, say, example, a 0 lot line on the side, because that would apply throughout the whole zone, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
And that would apply regardless of the weird shape or the straightforward rectangular shape of the property. So it's a different approach. This is a unique case. This gets unique treatment. A lot of the things that we did for Utah would apply to this property as well, and everyone else in the zone.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, the whole question of that balcony was that already covered by what we did with Utah? Because we didn't envision anybody doing it on the second floor, but it doesn't say it's limited to the first floor. So we weren't even sure if a variance was needed. But then when we discovered, well, we need a variance anyway for the back side of the building, we might as well take care of it this way and be really clean about it. So
All right. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very, very much. Wonderful. And the rest of the comments then will come from the dais. Does anybody like to chime in? Yes, of course.
Beautiful.
what I like is that the city and certainly the planning department and Greg and the fine folks that the applicants have worked with are taking a case-by-case basis based on the property itself and the needs for the property. And I think being more flexible rather than so rigid based on what the rules and what the printed word says, I think really allows us that flexibility to be creative and to end up with some very interesting projects. So I'm absolutely excited about it, and I can sure see that it would be very successful in that area. So, Michelle?
I feel similarly. I think the variance request based on building and not use is very straightforward. And while I think that the use is fantastic and can see a need and your excitement and your passion, I think then we'll just have to get a little more into the details when that comes around. But for now, I buy into your vision, and we'll just see how we address those things when it comes back at some time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with your statements, and I think that it really takes advantage of the location, and the variance is really necessary in order to build the kind of building that you'd want to have there, because right now it's almost functionally useless except for a warehouse and maybe a small office building. So I think it really takes good advantage of the location, and if your dream is realized, it's going to be a real seed that will grow in that area.
Yeah, I think, you know, although we talked about use and that was the exciting thing, what we're talking about is the variance, and staff did a good job of explaining why this particular project is needs some help. So I think the variances that you're looking for make a lot of sense.
If I could just interject one last thing in response to your comments. It is true that we're trying very hard to help people on a case-by-case basis, and we're looking for more flexibility, which was brought up. But I do want to point out for the benefit of the public that everything that we're doing is also very transparent. This variance is happening in a public hearing. Code amendments require 2 public hearings, and actually 3 if you count the third or the second reading at the council. This is very important that people understand that we're doing all of this out in the open, out front, where everybody can see, and it's not me, I'm just giving ideas, and it has to ultimately be approved by the Planning Commission or the City Council. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And with that, if there are no further comments,
No, I'd like to make a motion
very well.
to approve resolution number 2847, approving environmental assessment number 1229 and variance number 1801 to reduce or eliminate front and side setbacks, reduce by 10% the required landscaping within the setbacks, and eliminate the requirement for on-site loading space for the property located at 507 South Douglas Street.
Okay. A motion and second. Do I hear those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? 4-0. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Moving on to,
Sorry, Madam Chair,
yes.
really quick. The record should reflect that's a final decision of the Planning Commission, and it's subject to appeal within 10 days. Thank you.
thank you very much, Mr. King. Next on the agenda would be item number 2, determination of consistency of the proposed fiscal year 2018-19 capital improvement program CIP within the city of El Segundo and its general plan. And we have a report.
Yeah, we have a representative from our Public Works Department who's going to give this report.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. I'm happy to be here. I was supposed to present this very item last year, but my daughter was being born, so I was probably pacing up and down the street at the very same time this year.
It's an excellent excuse.
Yeah, 1 year late, a much happier man, so I'm happy to be
With
here.
less sleep.
To present the item for you. So we do this every year. So the item before you is relatively straightforward. It's basically to approve all the capital improvement are consistent with the general plan. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have on those. And I want to point out there's one item on it. It's Class 3 by route improvement project. And there will be by master plan implementation update right after this. So if you have a specific question about the project, I can answer them. But if you have more question regarding the overall strategy, that's an item that's going to come up.
So you said that you would answer some questions about the bike, restriping the bike lane
Yeah.
after this, if there were questions about
Right.
it.
If you have general questions about
Okay.
the implementation
Okay.
citywide, but if you have a specific question about this project itself, I can. Now's the time to ask those questions.
Okay, and we're here tonight to make sure that this particular group of prioritized projects are within the spirit of the city planning department. Is that
So
correct?
The general plan.
The general
General
plan,
plan.
yeah.
thank you.
So basically, all the items will be consistent with land use number 7, which is to provide the highest quality public facilities, service, and public infrastructure possible to community. And then there's all the Parks and Rec project will be consistent with land use element number 6, which is to maintain and upgrade existing excellent parks, recreation, and open space facility within the city of El Segundo. So it's all the projects relatively straightforward. So any questions on those?
I just had a quick question about the first 4 items that are highly prioritized, Indiana water main and so on and so forth. The first 4 items, they didn't actually have a CPAC score to them.
Let me clarify that they are not rented by CPAC because they are have their own funding sources. So the purpose of the CPAC is determine the ranking of unfunded project, so that can be presented before the city council. So if you actually look at the project detail sheets, those CPAC score are NA, so
Not applicable.
Mhm.
Yeah,
so
for the
that's why
first 4. yeah.
they are put in front of the table, but that's the number are not ranking; they're simply numbers.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I did go through them, and I noticed that number 9, which is the plunge, and number 10, annual curb, gutter, and sidewalk repair, those were funded through the gas tax, so they had its own funding.
The plunge is not funded by gas tax.
No, that is correct, but that had an ESUSD of $1 million cap, so it had some funding. But the next one down, number 10, number 14, number 17, those are funded through the gas tax. So I was just curious about the process, about how and why some of them were, but those first 4 were, they didn't even come before the CPAC committee.
That's a very good question.
Okay.
Because if you look at the first 3 or 4, they are all either water funded or sewer funded, and they are historically always have adequate fundings. And for the sidewalk and for the street, historically, there are not always enough funding for them. But this particular year, they do. But that's why I'm doing it more on based on how the history of the project was presented before the CPAC.
Is there a part of the process that when a project is submitted, that it works its way through every year? Do they have to resubmit?
Yes, it will submit, and the CPAC will have a chance to look at last year's score to decide whether they want to change their mind for this year based on the circumstances. But we do submit them every year, even if it reoccurring.
Okay. All right. We have any more questions there for staff?
Yeah, will you remind us again about the CPAC panel and the how the scores are made? Who are those people, those initials that are on there? Is that a committee that is
Yes,
put together?
the CPACs, they are El Segundo residents, and many of them are long-time CPAC members, and the chairman, Mike, who has been in the CPAC for over 20 years. So they really have the CPAC itself evolved over the year, and they changed their criteria from the early year, and finally, I think they found something that works very well for the past, I think, 6-7 years, and they have maintained their criteria for the last 6-7 years, and they are basically they have the health and safety factor, and then they have the return of investment, and then they have law and requirements, and then the coordination effort, community interest, and also system condition. So they are scoring according to the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Try to give it as an objective a score as possible. So that is the background on the CPAC, and they are open public meetings. So if anyone wants to advocate for a particular project, everyone is welcome to come.
Mm-hmm. So those 6 individuals,
Five.
I mean, that's a lot of power, right? I mean, they're making ultimate recommendations to how the money's spent. Does that then go to city council, and then city council has to approve that, or?
Correct.
Okay.
So the city council will ultimately be the one who decide what project will be approved. So the project will be the ranking of the project will present before the city council, but ultimately, if city council has a different ideas on how the priority should be, and they are the one who ultimately make the decision.
I see.
Historically, the city council does take the CPAC a wise very seriously. So
Yeah, I would hope so. It's a lot of money. Yeah. So just out of curiosity, the initials JL, JL never voted on anything.
Are those, that's right.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask you, do those stand for the
Is that a
initials of the
department?
people and what they voted for?
Those are the criteria.
That's the criteria,
having-
okay.
Okay.
Those
okay.
That's the
are
category that,
Yes,
Can you
yes.
tell us what those categories
Yes,
stand for?
HS is basically the safety,
safety,
Health and
okay,
safety.
the health and safety,
okay.
and SC is the system condition.
System
The
condition,
current
Right.
condition of the system.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. And then RI is return of investment,
Uh-huh.
right?
and JL is the I think it's joint law a requirement. I have to look that.
Joy law,
Yeah, I think it's a law requirement, but I have
Okay.
trouble remember what J is.
okay.
Yeah, but it's basically if there's a law
A
requirement.
legal requirement,
Legal requirement.
judicial law. How about we do that? We'll
Yes.
call it that.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, that's why I'm not the lawyer here.
Okay. CO would be what?
Yes, that's what that is. So, and CO is coordination opportunity,
Coordination opportunity, okay.
and then CI is a community interest.
Community interest, okay, good. Okay.
That's very valuable information we
Yeah.
just learned there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know then on just when it had a requesting department, everything was either Public Works or Park and Recs, which was great because that everything has to be funded through. I was just curious on a side note, just about how and this will be implemented for the main and Imperial Entryway Beautification Project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would that? Where does that fit in? And I know that it says it's part of a larger
Right.
project.
So the history of that one is originally it was proposed by Parks and Rec. It's more of an irrigation project years ago, but now it's being presented is more of economic development opportunity.
Okay, good. I'll just roll through another one of the.
Basically, it's going to be what people see when they first come to the city.
Oh yeah.
So it would be for this particular project, it would be probably led by Barbara from
Gotcha.
from
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
Sure. So that particular project, which I think is a great one to have on here, it's our front door. You know, it's
Mhm,
the
yep.
front door of the community. There's no design budget in there. There's a budget for construction, and I know we're probably not really here to talk about the nuts
No,
and
I'm
bolts
sure,
of each
yeah.
of these things, but I was just curious.
So it's really because it's not even, that's why first thing you need to go through is have a conceptual design.
Mhm.
So basically, I think that will involve community input, and also once the conceptual design is done, now then we can look at whether the budget fits or not. And then the city council has an opportunity to see if it's a great concept design, even though the approved budget is not sufficient to support the idea. They can at any time approve more funding for the project.
So does that mean
So it's more of a placeholder for now, because the other project may be more specific and already have a very defined a cost, but for that particular project, it's because
It hasn't been researched yet.
If it hasn't been researched yet, it's more
Okay.
placeholder because it will be a project developed over the next year.
So does that mean monies and energy will be spent on this project in fiscal year 2018, 2019? Is
If
that correct?
the budget is approved,
If it is approved?
yes.
I see, okay.
Even if it's not, then the staff can still look into it, but there will be no funding
Yeah.
available.
Now, some of these projects have partial funding,
And
like the Plunge and
Mhm.
like the Acacia Park. What happens to those?
well, because those are multi-year projects. So, for example, the plunge, it's going to be a multi-year project. So, for the next year, what we're proposing is have the funding at least to have do a scope assessment to know what kind of equipment you're going to need and how what part of the building do you really need to upgrade, and have look into what would be the latest, facility needs for indoor swimming pool. And then the year after that, if things goes, the budget is approved and things are going according to plan, then in the year 1920, then we'll request for design budget for the plunge, and then we can do the design. And once the design is done in the year after, we'll request funding for the construction themselves. And that's why it's not unlike some other smaller project, it's not something you can accomplish within a single year. That's why it's partial funding. Same situation with Acacia Park. So currently at Acacia Park, there's a pump station project in construction right now, and it's scheduled to be complete this fall. So once that is done, the Parks and Rec currently has a budget to do a conceptual design. So over the next 12 months, Parks and Rec will do community outreach. They will do an IFP to get architects and consultants to come up with a conceptual design. And once that is approved, then in the next year, we'll ask funding for both the design and construction. I would imagine the construction will probably take place in the fiscal year 1920, and that's why it's partial funding, because it's multi-year, not something you can do within a single year.
So for the Plunge, for example, there's $100,000 budgeted for this upcoming year, so that $100,000 would be used primarily for study.
Yes, for scoping, and if there's money left over, it would be put into the design later. So it's more a placeholder, and whatever fund is not used, it would be put into the later phase of the project.
Okay, good. Thank you for the explanation. That helps.
Welcome.
Yeah, and similarly, going back to the entrance, the community signage, there's simply a line item for construction, and what does that really mean? Who knows what it's going to cost until it's designed?
Correct.
And so, would that any of that money go to design, or is that a completely different budget on that particular project?
It will go into design. So it would need to be
It would be utilized probably for
Utilized.
design if they needed
Right.
X amount of dollars for the design of it, and whatever's left over would
Which
probably
of course you would. You can't
Mhm.
you can't
build
right.
anything until it's designed. So
It's just going to be a line item, an approval, and
Mhm.
it's got a very high CPAC rating of 20,
Mhm.
and so it's going to play up there in, where is that? Number 13. So it's about halfway down
Mhm.
the priority list, and the city council would then approve that someone could spend, some department, $150,000 to research, and I'm sure there would be, then a committee would be resurrected to figure out X amount of dollars for design, and then maybe it would be the Arts and Culture Committee, or there would be another committee for the Main Street and Imperial Gateway or something like that, right? That's basically how it would get done.
Yes.
I still have, and I don't mean to go back, but just to get a lay of the land for the big picture and the big feel of things, I still am not clear why numbers 1 through 4 had no CPAC rating.
Yes, because they have adequate funding. So really, the CPAC is focus their energy to run projects that really fighting for funding. Let me put it that way. So because historically, there's never enough funding for all the projects. So that's why they need to establish a CPAC committee to begin with. Their function is run this project that unfunded, so they could present it before the city council to make decision on which project should get the highest priority. And
But what would differentiate numbers 1 through 4 versus 14 and 17? The residential slurry seal program, there's adequate funding for $500,000 through the gas tax, so there is no funding that's needed from the city.
right, for this year,
But why would CPAC vote on that one, but not on numbers 1 through 4? I was just trying to understand the system. That's all.
right, for this year, they may not need to, but historically they do, because there was a need for the general fund to complement the gas tax in order to have adequate funding for the road project historically. But this particular year, we have sufficient. So, if you look at it that way, we may not really need to put that in front of CPAC. It's more of a habit this year to follow what we have done consistently
Okay.
over the year. So, if you just look
So
at
the CPAC committee didn't really approve
Right.
items 1 through 4, because they would just they're automatically budgeted, so they didn't really need to be on this.
Mhm.
What they have prioritized are the other items.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any
So-
other questions?
I have a question about this specific project. You mentioned the bike lane stuff, and I'd love to hear about that. I'd love to hear what they're all class 3, and does that mean they're all sharrows? Is that what's the plan on those?
Class 3, basically, that's because the definition of Cheryl as class 3 has really an evolving concept, but basically, this project is involve markings on the street that indicated this is a share, a road for both bike and vehicles, and then signs on the street that needs to be posted to indicate that this is a bike and a vehicle share street. So you can understand it that way, Cheryl. But it's the concept. It has been changed over the years. So it's not exactly, but you Cheryl is more, you have a divide, a share space between the vehicles and the bike.
Is that a painted stripe?
Yeah, but by class number 3 doesn't have that line there.
I know that.
That's
It's
the
just an
difference.
understood
Yeah.
sharing between a bike and a car.
Right. So it would have marking
Understood
on the
by who?
street indicating
Right.
the bike, but it doesn't have
Right.
the line that this is the specific area, the vehicle and the the bike will be sharing.
So I guess my question is, all these streets that you have indicated on this, Main Street from Imperial, Grand Avenue from Loma Vista, Nash from Imperial Highway to El Segundo, these are all intended to be Class 3. So there's just simply sharrows painted on the ground and no stripes, or will some of these have actual striped delineations?
There will be Class 3, so it won't be won't have the stripe.
Will there be a sign posting?
Yes, signpost,
Sign posting.
as well as a striping in terms of not the line,
But an arrow, as you pointed
but
out.
an arrow.
Okay.
Right.
So it'll be recognizable for both the driver and the
Correct.
of the bike or the. I find it interesting, Jay, that in December of 2009, the South Bay Bicycle Coalition came before Planning Commission, and I was just appointed in April of that year, and it's taken 9 years.
Yeah.
9 years ago.
Right.
That's
Yeah, and
amazing.
some of the streets, some of the uses have changed since then. Certainly there's a lot more daytime traffic on the east side of PCH. The metro stations are there now. I'm curious to know why Douglas Street is not on this list. Again, there's a new high school. There's it's a 7-lane road. I got to believe that Douglas would be a prime candidate for striping a Class 2 bike lane along there.
We have a presentation on the whole bike issue scheduled immediately after you guys vote on the CPAP.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you. That's great. Good to hear.
All
That
right.
Douglas Street will be addressed specifically on that one.
Okay.
Say-
And I'm sorry, Greg, when is that meeting?
Next.
The
mean,
next.
Right now.
Next item.
As soon as you're done voting on this item.
talking.
Yes,
I don't
right
even have to
here,
move.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's on the agenda.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Michelle?
one question on the plunge allocation. So it's just a scope assessment for 100,000. So how is that different from what was previously done that assessed the 2.4 million as the dollar amount?
Yeah, I think the plan is to use the previous assessment. However, the assessment for the 2.4, one is it's outdated. Two is the scope was very limited. It was only looking for replacing really the pool itself. So and a lot of the equipment it may not be the best ones currently. So the idea is utilize that particular study, but expanded the scope. And I want to point out 100,000. It's not. It's a more conservative placeholder. It could be 50,000 realistically, but whatever is not spent will be pushed back to on the later design phase.
And that money, whatever would be left would go towards the plunge or just back into
The plunge,
general?
but it's ultimately up to the city council to decide. But the plan is to push it.
Right. So if we don't want
Right.
to incur another 100,000 in 4 years, we should encourage them to choose that option then.
Right. So if you have carry over funding for a particular item, it will be it will make the budget process easier because this particular year we are in really good financial shape, but it's hard to predict the future. So that's why our plan is do a multi-year capital improvement projects list. That way we can plan things out instead of try to rush everything in 1 year. So we have a longer view of things and we can see the projects lines up. So that's our plan, and we are start working on it. And I do want to point out this year is a little different than previous year because we have a facility assessment currently ongoing. So that's why, to answer your earlier question, you only see public works and communities and parks and recs, and that's because the facility assessment is being currently conducted. So all the facility projects is currently put on hold Until that is completed, then we will have a list of priority on all the city facilities, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of proposal from other departments, because they're waiting for this facility assessment to be concluded.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Is it Mr. Zhu?
Yes, correct.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? And then we could ask the applicant, which would be the city again, to stand up. But we won't do that. You're here. Any other questions? All right. Any other questions? None for me. With that, if there are any other statements from the dais or concerns or.
It's nice to know that we have a group of citizens in El Segundo who look at all of this information and make some informed and intelligent decisions.
I will agree with you. Absolutely. It's a good dedication of time and energy. With that, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion we adopt resolution number 2846, determining that the proposed FY 2018-19 capital improvement program is consistent with the City of El Segundo general plan.
A second?
Oh, I'll second it.
Oh,
I thought you were seconding it.
No. Do I hear a
Second.
second? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Okay. Next, we will have any continued business?
No.
None. And we will have a report from Planning Building Safety Director Designee.
I'm going to turn my time over to a discussion by the Public Works Department regarding the status and implementation of bicycle routes throughout the city.
I'm back. So the first slide in front of you is the bicycle master plan that was adopted by the city back in 2011. So it would lay out a framework of bike-friendly streets and class 3, class 2, and class 1 bike lanes in the city. And the next slide will show our implementation plan for next few years. So for next year, this is bike route, class 3 bike routes we are proposing, if the budget is approved, to put in the class 3 bike routes in basically all the streets that's in the bike master plan. The Utah should be there. That's missing, but Utah will be part of the next year's plan to implement the class 3 bike route. So that would be all the class 3. And the year after that is we are going to have a very big project. We're going to reconstruct El Segundo Boulevard from PCH to Aviation. We're going to have repay the whole street. And with that particular project, we are going to implement all the class 1 and 2 that are feasible on the east side. It will really include the Douglas from Imperial to Rosecrans, and El Segundo Boulevard itself from PCH Aviation, and Mariposa from Douglas to PCH. So that would basically complete all the feasible bike 1 and 2 lanes on the east side. And then after that is the plan is to take on the harder projects that are subject to basically property acquisitions and negotiation, and when a development gets there, we need to negotiate to get for the condition and get the dedication to get the area that's needed to build a bike. Currently, there's not sufficient right way to build bikeways in those two major streets, Rosecrans and Aviation. Especially Aviation, we probably need to continue to work with Metro in order to get them either from easement from them or some property from them in order to have enough space to build the bike lane. But those are the further future plan. And there's one particular one that's not on here. There will be by a project itself, and probably we are researching currently and probably gonna show up in the next few months. Is the Washington street, and that one in the bike master plan is class 1, and we are researching into it to see whether, because in that particular street there's a very wide Edison easement, so we are looking into whether that should be a bike lane for transportation purpose only, or we make it into to incorporate other element with the Edison easement to make it more of either more of a park element and exercising, bike circulated bike lane. So we are looking to that one. That could be a project by itself, and that's why it's not on here. So, but I will probably have a better idea within the next year, and the implementation plan will be updated. So that would basically include all the streets in the bicycle master plan.
All right.
Thank you. So 2018, 2019 will just be class 1, sharrows, signs, that sort of thing. And by the way, these streets are all legal to ride bikes on now, currently. Is that right?
Right.
So it's just public awareness that
Correct.
that bikes and cars should coexist. And then 2019, 2020 are class 2, which is going to be a stripe on the side.
Yep, class 2 and some class 1. I think currently we are in front of the El Segundo Boulevard, in front of Raytheon campus where there's a development. We have a condition for them to build a section of class 1 that is currently in plan check. So if that development is developed as expected, we'll have a class 1 actually ahead of time, only a section of it in front of that development. But when the El Segundo Boulevard rehab project happened in the summer of 2020, everything will be implemented.
Yeah, the section in front of the new Raytheon
Correct.
retail, whatever that area is going to be called, is nice. It's sort of a bike path to nowhere, but it'll be nice once that's connected. So Rosecrans already has a bike path along there. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's not. It's not one continuous. So there are some plans right around the Sepulveda for the bike lane, but it's not, the plan is make it all the way through. So it's currently in the work on some session. But
yeah. So
to have it continuous bike lane all along Rosecrans, that's further away.
The section at the corner, at the northwest corner of Rosecrans and Sepulveda, PCH, there's a little bus stop there, and there's no bike lane, and then all of a sudden the bike lane starts. I'm on the South Bay Bike Coalition, and we've been talking with Chevron about can they complete that, and there's some finger pointing. Is that El Segundo? Is that Manhattan Beach? Is that Chevron? And so I'm not sure.
We're currently trying to walk through that. So it's a joint effort because it involves all three, Chevron, City of Segundo, as well as Manhattan Beach, in order to get that resolved. So that is currently in the work.
You know where that's right where that new power line was replaced, right there on that corner. And there seems to be some new construction going on there now. So have you heard anything from Chevron? Are they the ones ultimately putting in that improvement?
They are. It's their property that needs to be. That the bike is built on, but I think who put it on, I think is still, you know, in the in the process, the way I understand it. So, I'm sorry, I don't have, because I was not particularly involved in that project, so I really couldn't give you more details, but I can certainly look into it.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's just a tiny little stretch, but I realize it's someone's real property. I just get the impression that nobody's really sure who is responsible, because I've spoken to Lily at Chevron, and she said, oh, we're thinking about it, but Manhattan Beach is supposed to do this and the other thing, and I'm thinking, well, that's on the El Segundo side of Rosecrans, and I just wasn't quite sure where that thing lived.
Hey, Jay, do you, with this bike master plan, do you share these areas, these lanes now with birds and limes?
Well, that's a good question for the city attorney and for the police department, because, yeah, I mean,
Should they be approved for use?
yeah, so
Then-
the scooters are not allowed on sidewalks.
They're not allowed on sidewalks. You have to have them in the street.
Right,
You have to
and
have a helmet just like you would a bicycle.
So I would, elsewhere
Although
in the
no.
country, the scooters are used in the bike lanes.
Okay.
So again, that's up to the police commissioner, or the police chief, and the city attorney. But
Well, you can use them. They just can't be left here and in the rented manner. There's a temporary moratorium on them now. I
Right,
get that.
right.
But if I owned one, I just could pop outside and hop on it and away I go.
Yeah, I think if it's above 35 miles per hour or above, the state law requires that they be ridden in the Class 2 bike lane. They have to be in a bike lane if it's 35 miles per hour. or
God, 35
above.
miles an hour
Or-
on
or-
a scooter, that'd be
below.
scary.
35 miles an hour is super fast.
Super
Well, they're,
fast.
they're not actually going that fast. It's just that any streets
Rated.
that are rated or signs that
Yeah.
I see.
the mileage would be higher speeds.
Right.
They have to be
Gotcha.
ridden not in the lanes.
Yeah.
But with Lime and Bird, there were people that were riding in lanes on PCH, which is a really big problem.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
All right. So this is good. We're
Yeah,
moving
this is
forward.
good.
Things are happening, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if the budget is approved.
Yeah.
Well, city
Hanging
council
that
will
over
have
our
to,
heads.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
City council will take care of that one way or the other, right? Yeah, they'll work through the process.
So, Leafon, I actually have a South Bike Coalition meeting next week. Can I get a copy of this and share that with the team?
Yeah, sure. I email it to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Email it to you. So
Don't forget to add Utah to that
yeah,
street, right?
right.
Okay.
That should be on there.
All right, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very good.
Well, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you very much again. Okay, that was very interesting. Things are happening. I
Yeah.
just can't believe how long.
Yeah.
Well,
years
thank you.
ago.
Money,
It's
money,
taken,
money,
well,
money.
that's right.
And
Um,
thanks for putting up with me being a squeaky wheel. I realize
A squeaky cog in the
my
wheel.
wife says you have to stop talking about bike lanes. I said, well, that's
It's all good. It's what-
important.
That's
yeah.
all right.
Right, so-
We're not bored with it
Well,
yet.
thank you. Okay,
You might be you're 15 otherwise.
I understand.
That's right.
No,
All right, we'll move on. Item number K. Do we have any planning commissioners' comments this evening?
I do not.
Okay, neither do I. All right. With that, I think our next meeting is scheduled for August 23rd. And with that, we are adjourned.